The tow chain snapped tight, and my work van started moving before I could even shout. I stood there, frozen, watching my livelihood scrape across the gravel tools, rattling permits still on the dashboard, while the tow truck dragged it toward the road like it was junk. At the edge of my property, the HOA president didn't rush. She smiled, clipboard tucked under her arm. "Emergency safety removal," she said. Calm, practiced. I told her that van was how I worked. She shrugged. "Then you should have checked your boundaries." That's when I noticed the ground. Fresh rebar stakes, bright caps, a straight line cutting through my yard where no line had ever existed. She followed my stare and lowered her voice. "This land is under review for stormwater access," she said. "Cooperate and this stays simple." The tow truck disappeared. My van was gone. She turned to leave, certain she'd won. She had no idea that the next vehicle to show up wouldn't be mine, and it wouldn't be leaving so quietly. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't have to. Sloan Reddick, president of the Brookvale Ridge HOA, stepped past my gate and waved the tow driver off like this was already settled business. Then she turned to me and slapped a laminated notice onto my fence. "Public safety review in progress. The ink still sharp, still fresh. Access beyond this point is restricted," Sloan said, already scanning my property like she was pricing it. I told her she was standing on private land. She smiled, once thin and patient the way people do when they think the rules are about to crush you. "For now," she said, "that's exactly why we're here." She pointed to the line of rebar stakes her people had driven into my yard. Bright caps, perfect spacing, too perfect. "Stormwater mitigation," she explained. "The community needs a new runoff corridor. Your lot happens to be optimal." I asked who approved it. She tapped her clipboard. "The board?" I asked when the board voted. She didn't answer. Instead, she listed fines, deadlines, liens, all in the same calm tone, like she was reading parking rules instead of outlining how she planned to squeeze me off my land. "You can cooperate," Sloan said, finally meeting my eyes. "Or you can make this expensive." Then she stepped back toward the road phone, already in her hand, confident she'd just broken another homeowner. She didn't realize she'd crossed from enforcement into theft, and she had no idea the next vehicle I called would bring her authority to a dead stop. The first citation showed up before noon. It wasn't mailed. It wasn't posted legally. It was slapped onto my mailbox with a strip of neon tape like a warning label. "Equipment obstruction final notice." No date. No inspector ID. Just the HOA seal and Sloan Reddick's signature printed a little too clean. By mid-afternoon, her courtesy patrol rolled past twice. Slow. Phones up. One of them lingered long enough to film through my front window, zooming in on the empty space where my work van used to be. They wanted a reaction. I gave them none. The next morning, I found orange flags tied along my fence every 20 feet, marking a line that cut straight through my yard. Same line as the rebar stakes. Same message: "This isn't yours anymore." I walked the perimeter with my phone recording, reading each posted violation out loud. Visual hazard, unapproved materials, obstruction of future access. Future access. That phrase showed up 3 times, always vague, always threatening. A neighbor across the street caught my eye and shook his head once. Later, when the patrol was gone, he crossed over and whispered, "She's doing this all over the ridge. Anyone who sits where Phase 2 is supposed to go." That was the first time I heard it said out loud. Phase 2. Sloan didn't knock when she called the board meeting. She emailed the notice to the entire HOA list at 6:04 a.m., marked mandatory, and scheduled it for that same night. I went. The clubhouse was packed, folding chairs, standing room, tension thick enough to taste. Sloan stood at the front with a projector already warmed up, a map frozen on the screen behind her. "This amendment passed unanimously," she said, tapping the laser pointer along a shaded strip that ran directly through my lot. "The stormwater corridor is critical infrastructure. Non-compliant properties will be addressed immediately." I raised my hand. She didn't call on me. Instead, the HOA attorney stepped in, smooth and rehearsed. "Mr. Carter, refusal to grant access will result in daily fines and possible towing of any remaining equipment." "Towing?" What I asked. "You already took my van." A few heads turned. Sloan didn't flinch. "That vehicle was a hazard," she said. "And we can repeat the process if necessary." I asked to see the vote record. She clicked to the next slide, meeting minutes, neat bullet points, a list of names. Too neat. No timestamps. No signatures. 2 board members I knew well weren't even present that week. When I pointed that out, she smiled. The board delegated authority. Delegated. Another word that sounded legal until you leaned on it. The attorney leaned forward. "You're welcome to consult counsel," he said. "But understand this: compliance now is cheaper than resistance later." That was the moment the room shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just a subtle tightening. People were starting to realize this wasn't about rules. It was about leverage. I didn't go home after the meeting. I went straight to the county portal. It took me 15 minutes to find it buried under a recent filing labeled Provisional Plat Overlay Infrastructure Adjustment. The upload time was stamped 2 days before my van was towed. The approval box was blank. I overlaid it with the last recorded parcel map. The lines didn't match. Not close. The HOA's shaded corridor carved a clean path through my land, rerouting runoff from the entire upper subdivision straight across my property. Permanent, enforceable, profitable. An email attachment inside the filing made my stomach drop. Project budget $2. 4M, contractor Ridgeway Civil. Consulting $18,000 S. Sloan Reddick. This wasn't enforcement, it was preparation. I felt it then, the only full hit of it. Not anger, not panic. A cold understanding that they were trying to turn my land into a utility before anyone noticed to bury the theft under safety and paperwork. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Don't fight this," the text read. "Phase 2 is happening with or without you." I stood there, staring at the screen, the cursor blinking on the county site, the fake boundary glowing like a wound. They hadn't just taken my van to hurt me. They'd taken it to slow me down. And now that I saw the whole structure, the filings, the money, the timing, I understood something else just as clearly. This wasn't a neighbor dispute anymore. It was an engineered takeover. I went to the county office before the HOA could spin the story. The clerk didn't recognize my name, but she recognized the file number the second I slid it across the counter. Her smile faded. She turned her monitor slightly away and typed without speaking for a long moment. "That overlay wasn't approved," she said finally. "It was uploaded, not recorded. There's a difference. Uploaded means anyone with the right access can shove a document into the system. Recorded means it passed review, witnessed, logged, locked." "Can you see who uploaded it?" I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, and the timestamp doesn't match the meeting minutes your HOA submitted." She leaned closer. "Those minutes were attached after the upload, backdating." I asked for a certified copy of the last lawful boundary map and walked it straight to a county engineer I'd worked with years earlier. He didn't waste time. "This corridor can't exist without owner consent," he said, dragging a ruler across the printout. "And stormwater doesn't magically change direction because an HOA wants it to." He made a call while I was still in the room. By the time I left, 3 things were already in motion: a records hold on the HOA's recent filings, a request for towing documentation, and a scheduled site verification official logged unavoidable. On my way home, I filed a police report for the tow. Not dramatic, just factual. Location, time, authority claimed. Evidence attached. The officer raised an eyebrow when I showed him the HOA notice. "They told the tow company this was county directed," he asked. "That's what they claimed." He sighed. "That's going to be a problem for them." By dusk, Sloan knew I'd gone outside her sandbox. My phone lit up with emails, warnings, clarifications, a sudden offer to pause enforcement pending discussion. I didn't reply. The message came from a burner address just after dark. "You didn't hear this from me." Attached was a screenshot, a text thread, Sloan's name at the top. "Consulting fee cleared. Push the corridor vote before end of month. Delay him however necessary. $18,000. The same number in the budget. I forwarded it to my attorney, the county engineer, and the clerk. No commentary, just the file. Then I sent one more email to the entire HOA list. Subject line, emergency meeting evidence review. I attached the overlay comparison, the timestamp discrepancy, and the tow report number. No accusations, no insults, just documents. Within minutes, replies started stacking up. Questions, confusion. A few panicked messages from board members asking who authorized what. Sloan called me directly. "You're making a serious mistake," she said, voice tight. "This can still be handled internally." "You already handled it internally?" I said. "That's the problem." She switched tactics, promises, threats, a final warning about what happens to people who interfere with infrastructure projects. I ended the call. At 7:42 p.m., the HOA announced an emergency meeting at the clubhouse. Mandatory attendance. Same room, same projector, same stakes, only now everyone knew something was wrong. I arrived early. The parking lot was full. Neighbors stood in small clusters, phones out whispering. Sloane paced near the entrance, clipboard clenched so hard her knuckles were white. She spotted me and hissed, "You think paperwork is going to save you?" I didn't answer. I just watched the road. At exactly 8:01, headlights cut across the lot. A White County truck rolled in and parked by the curb logo, clear under the lights. The driver stepped out, reflective vest, catching the glow. Behind him, a second vehicle pulled up, plain, unmarked official. Sloane's face drained of color. The engineer I'd spoken to earlier walked past her without slowing. "Evening," he said to the room at large. "We're here to verify boundaries." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sloane opened her mouth, then closed it. She tried again. "This is an HOA matter." The investigator didn't look at her. Not anymore. They wheeled a case inside, set it on the table, opened it, survey equipment, stamped maps, a sealed notice. I felt the room lean forward, every eye following the same realization. The vehicle she never expected, the one she couldn't tow, fine, or intimidate, had finally arrived. And whatever happened next was going to happen in front of everyone. The room went quiet the moment the county engineer set his case on the table. Sloane Reddick tried to recover fast. She stepped forward, lifted her clipboard like a shield, and addressed the room instead of the officials. "This meeting is for HOA business only," she said. "Outside parties are not authorized." No one moved. The engineer didn't raise his voice. "This verification was requested through the county," he said, placing a sealed envelope beside the projector. "Your HOA filings triggered a records review." Sloane laughed once, sharp and brittle. "That's unnecessary. We already clarified the amendment." She clicked the projector. Her corridor map flashed back onto the screen, the same shaded strip cutting through my land. "This infrastructure protects the entire community," she said. "One homeowner doesn't get to block safety." A few people nodded. Others looked unsure. That's when the investigator stepped in. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "before you continue, are you asserting this boundary was lawfully recorded?" Sloane hesitated. "Just a fraction of a second." "Yes," she said. "It was delegated." The engineer opened his case. "Then let's compare." He laid two maps side by side on the table and rotated them so the room could see. On the left, the official county parcel map, stamped, indexed, logged. On the right, Sloane's overlay. The difference was obvious. The HOA line drifted, bent inward, carved through my lot like it was never meant to be noticed. "These don't match," the engineer said. "Not within allowable variance. Not even close." Sloane started talking fast now. "Stormwater modeling requires flexibility." The investigator raised a hand. "One moment." He held up a printout. "This overlay was uploaded at 1:14 p.m., 2 days before the meeting. You claim approved it." The minutes referencing that vote were attached afterward. A murmur spread through the room. Then came the tow documentation. The investigator read it once and slid it forward. "The towing company states they were told this removal was county-directed." That was false. Sloane's jaw tightened. Finally, the engineer turned to the crowd. "No easement exists on Mr. Carter's property. None has ever been recorded. Any enforcement based on this overlay is invalid." The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Phones came up. Sloane's voice rose. "This is being taken out of context." The developer, the investigator, looked up. "You mean the consultant you paid $18,000? Silence. Sloane spun toward him. "That was for planning support. Paid 3 days before the overlay upload," he continued. "Listed as a consulting fee tied to Phase 2. She looked around the room, searching for backup. The board members avoided her eyes. "This community needs progress," she snapped. "You all voted for it." One of the board members stood. "We never voted on this." Another followed. "You said it was already approved." Sloane's clipboard slipped from her hand and hit the floor. The investigator stepped closer. "Miss Reddick, based on the evidence presented tonight, you are being removed from HOA authority, effective immediately, pending further review. You are also directed to cease all enforcement actions." Her face drained of color. "You can't do that." "I just did," he said. "And we're seizing all HOA records related to boundary amendments and infrastructure agreements." He turned to the engineer. "Begin verification." The engineer nodded. Around the room, people stood, not cheering, watching, witnessing the moment her control finally collapsed. Sloane backed toward the door, breath shallow, eyes locked on me. "This isn't over," she said. I didn't answer. Because it already was? The system she tried to weaponize had turned on her right where she thought she was untouchable. And every person in that room knew it. No one rushed the door when Sloane left. The room stayed frozen in that strange quiet that comes after a structure collapses, but the dust hasn't settled yet. People looked at each other like they were waking up from a long shared mistake. One neighbor finally broke it, an older man in the second row who stood and said, "She told us this was already approved." A woman near the back nodded. "She said the county signed off." Another voice followed. "She threatened fines if we asked questions." It came out fast after that. Apologies didn't sound rehearsed. They sounded relieved. People admitted they'd stayed quiet because they were scared of citations liens being labeled non-compliant. I didn't give a speech. I didn't need to. I stood there listening while the board members quietly gathered their things, no longer sure who they represented. Then my phone buzzed. I put it on speaker. The tow company dispatcher confirmed it plainly. The work van was being returned immediately. No charges, full documentation provided to the county. The keys would be waiting at the lot within the hour. A murmur moved through the room. Not applause, recognition. The harm was being undone in real time. For the first time since the chain snapped tight around my van, I felt my shoulders drop. Not victory, release. The county investigator stayed in the room and took the next call himself. He put it on speaker so everyone could hear. The county attorney confirmed receipt of the evidence package, overlay manipulation, false towing authorization, misrepresentation of jurisdiction, and the consulting payment. A formal civil action was being opened. Criminal review would follow. The investigator stated clearly that all HOA enforcement powers were suspended pending outcome. Then came the second confirmation. The clerk's office announced a new hold had been placed on any plat easement or infrastructure filing associated with the HOA. No boundary change could proceed without individual landowner consent, a third-party survey, and a public county hearing. The board president, what was left of the board, asked quietly what happened next. The answer was short. "You stop," the investigator said. "You preserve records, and you wait." No courtroom speech, no gavel, just authority returning to where it was supposed to be all along. I watched the projector screen go dark as the county engineer unplugged it. The fake corridor disappeared. So did the illusion that paperwork alone could erase ownership. Someone from the county facilities department stepped forward next. Same room, same moment. He explained that the stormwater issue wasn't imaginary, but it had always been the HOA's responsibility to fix on their own land. The county would oversee a proper solution there, not on mine. That detail mattered. The rebar stakes would be removed under supervision, the ground restored. Survey markers would be reset according to the official map, already printed, already stamped. A neighbor handed me a folded copy of that map as the engineer passed it around. Heavy paper, clean lines, final. I looked at it once, then folded it and put it in my jacket pocket. Around me, people started talking about normal things again. Who'd been scared to paint their porch. Who'd paid fines they never questioned. Who was done being quiet. The room didn't feel lighter because someone lost. It felt lighter because the pressure was gone. I stepped outside for a breath. The parking lot was still full, but the air had changed. The county survey truck sat under the lights, engine ticking as it cooled. It hadn't moved an inch of dirt. It hadn't needed to. Inside, the investigator wrapped up and nodded to me on his way out. "You did the right thing," he said. "Most people don't." I watched him leave, then turn back to the building, no longer a weapon, just a room. When I locked my gate later that night, it wasn't out of defiance. It was routine again. The sound of it clicking shut didn't echo. It settled. The land felt like itself. Paper can be forged, but boundaries remember who stands on them.